In Mark chapter 7, beginning with verse 31, we read, "Then he returned from the region of Tyre and went through Sidon to the Sea of Galilee in the region of the Decapolis. And they brought him a man who was deaf and had a speech impediment. And they begged him to lay his hand on him. And taking him aside from the crowd privately, he put his fingers into his ears, and after spitting, touched his tongue. And looking up to heaven, he sighed and said to him, Ephphatha, that is, be opened. And his ears were opened. His tongue was released, and he spoke plainly. And Jesus charged them to tell no one. But the more he charged them, the more zealously they proclaimed it. And they were astonished beyond measure, saying, He has done all things well. He even makes the deaf hear and the mute speak. The more we get to know Jesus, the more we get to know him through stories like this one, the more we get to know him throughout all of Mark's gospel account, the more we can share that sense that those witnessing these miracles felt, that Jesus is someone astonishing. Jesus is someone who does all things well. Because who else has the ability to reach out and touch someone's ears, to touch their mouth, and to undo deafness, to even undo a speech impediment? So complete is Jesus's power that he's able to not only cure the physical disability, but all of the effects that stem from it. And so great is Jesus' compassion that as he sees what the sin in this world has burdened us with, the disease and disability and hardship, he sighs with us. He sighs for us. He feels for us as he sees our struggle. And he looks to God, looking up into heaven for the power, for the authority, for the ability to be able to undo that. So complete was Jesus' reliance on God the Father, and so strong was his desire to do the Father's will alone, that as he works with this great power, did you notice that he didn't heal this man right there in the midst of this great crowd, but he took him to the side and did it privately? Jesus wasn't after fame and fortune as other people would be. Jesus was concerned with accomplishing what God the Father had sent him here to do, and knowing that we wouldn't get that people weren't ready yet to understand and appreciate just what it was he was here to do. Jesus heals privately, and then he urges those that he heals not to tell anybody. But the more that he tells us to keep it quiet, the more people blab. Yet even in that, we see something about Jesus. Because Jesus doesn't say, well, guess I got to stop healing people. They just won't listen. Jesus doesn't lose his temper or shut down his ministry, nor does Jesus say, well, I guess I've just got to accept all the praise. I guess I've just got to accept all the attention. No, Jesus remains focused on what God sent him there to do, even though our inability to keep it quiet made fulfilling it that much harder for him. Still, Jesus stayed focused on what God wanted him to do. Still, Jesus would stop and compassionately help people around him, even though he knew they weren't going to keep it quiet, even though he knew it was going to make life harder for him. That's who Jesus is. That's what Jesus did. And as we read stories like this and know he has the power to restore hearing to the deaf, to give speech to the mute, let us also remember all of these other details that Mark was inspired to give us to understand who Jesus is, because he truly is astonishing. Jesus is someone that as you know him, you recognize he truly does all things